What is up, guys? This is Rich with Red Phone Video, and I wanted to talk about these movies right here today. The Sleepaway Camp trilogy. We're not going to talk about part 4. Let's just pretend that one doesn't exist. But I wanted to talk about the original trilogy here. Specifically, I wanted to talk about this Sleepaway Camp Survival Kit box set. It was released by Anchor Bay in 2002. And it included, as you can see, it included a bonus fourth DVD there for a film called Sleepaway Camp for the Survivor. And it was partially filmed in 1992, and the production company, Double Helix Films, they went bankrupt. But this guy, his name was John Kliza, I believe. He had a website, and I remember this website like when I was in high school. There was actually two websites. There was one called sleepawaycampmovies.com. I believe that one was headed by Jeff Nelson, and that mainly dealt with like the first film. And then John Kliza had a website called sleepawaycampfilms.com, and that was more devoted to the sequels, part 2 and part 3. But I remember being really excited, especially when I started looking at these websites, because the websites when I was in high school, this would have been around 99, 2000. I would check these websites in class, and they would have all this news about Sleepaway Camp, which wasn't really popular at the time. These were just, films that I grew up on. And DVD was such a new thing in the home video market. And I never thought these movies would actually see the light of day on DVD, but eventually Anchor Bay had announced that they were going to do the films. They were going to release the films in a box set. And that's when I got really horny and excited for this survival kit. And as you can see, I do have the edition with the Red Cross, which is out of print and going for insane, stupid, ridiculous prices now on eBay. People are trying to hawk it for good reason. I mean, it's a collector's item, but for those who don't know, basically, they recalled this box set from Best Buy and all the stores that were carrying it because the Red Cross packaging basically violated the Geneva Convention. And there was essentially a representative of the Canadian Red Cross who had contacted Anchor Bay and said that the use of the Red Cross insignia was restricted by the Geneva Convention. So because it was only supposed to be used for civilian hospitals, since they were only permitted to use the emblem, Anchor Bay had to pull this shit off the shelves. And I was really glad to get my copy of this because this box subsequently was replaced by a new box, and it no longer had the Red Cross on it. It just had Sleepaway Camp Survival Kit, and it was spelled out in blood red letters. And a lot of people are probably more aware of this edition now. But this sucker was so awesome. I remember when I first picked it up. I'm going to tell you guys a story about it. I was working HVAC, and I was out on a construction job, and I was hot as hell. And I remember this Sleepaway Camp box set was coming out that day. Back then, I always went to the websites and found out when all the DVDs were going to be released. Back then, I always kept up with movie releases. I mean, I still do, obviously, but they used to have this website called upcomingmovies.com or something. So I knew when everything was going to come out. And I remember I was at work that day, and during my lunch break, I only got a 30-minute lunch break. But the foreman I was working with, I told him, I said, look, man, I'm just going to run to Best Buy really quick. I might be a little past 30 minutes. I might be a little late coming back from lunch, but I've got to go buy some movies. And this guy had no fucking clue why I was so obsessed with buying movies, but I told him I've got to go. And so I actually picked this up day one at Best Buy, and I was really glad to get my hands on it. Because I really fucking love this box set. And it's crazy that it goes for the ridiculous prices that it goes for on eBay, but I totally get it. Because I'll never sell mine. So I completely get that there's value in it, especially if you're an avid movie collector and horror buff like me. But yeah, so I picked it up on my lunch break, and I was just happy as hell to get it. And then I think it was a few months later they pulled it from the shelves. But yeah, just to show you guys what's on the inside, I wanted to kind of showcase these for you real quick. As you can see, the box showing the sunscreen lotion and the Band-Aids and all that good shit. Then on the inside, you have the Sleepaway Camp diary. You got the original Sleepaway Camp classic film. Love it. I love how they put the original cover art on there. Then, of course, you have part 2. Sleepaway Camp 2, Unhappy Campers. That is not Angela on the front. That is, I don't know who that is, but this was a really recognizable cover for me back in the video store days. And then you have part 3, Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland, which I didn't even know this one existed until I was a little up older. I had seen the first Sleepaway Camp, and then I saw the second one. And then a buddy of mine in grade school, he told me, he was like, man, did you know that there's a Sleepaway Camp 3? And I thought he was lying. I didn't even know about it. But then I saw it, and I really liked it. It's not my favorite, but part 3, it's fun. Now, of course, years later, Scream Factory would pick up the Sleepaway Camps, and I want to say 2 and 3 are actually out of print now. I think you can still get the first one, but the sequels are actually kind of hard to find. So I'm real glad to have this box set, and I do have the Scream Factory editions too. Don't think I didn't pick those up because those are actually better than this. I really like the packaging of this. This is more of a collector's item than anything, but the transfers on the Blu-rays are definitely way better. And the only thing I don't like about this is that when I first bought these, I noticed that the first film was edited. Yes, it was cut because I remember seeing Sleepaway Camp on VHS when I was a kid and it was not cut. But then when you watch the first one on this, and I believe even parts of the second film, if I'm not mistaken, but in the first film, there's a character named Kenny. I think he's played by a dude named John Dunn, but he drowns, and then the following morning, a counselor discovers his body, and there's a snake that comes out of his mouth. And I want to say in the VHS version, as a matter of fact, I know in the VHS version that that scene goes on a little bit longer. In the VHS version, you see everything. It's just completely uncut. And also there's some other stuff like you see a bunch of male ass for a lot longer. And the whole death by bees sequence in the bathroom, I want to say that was a little truncated. But yeah, that's why I have problems with this. I do love it as a collector's item, but if you guys really want to get your hands on the films, definitely pick up these Blu-rays, which you can still get the first one. You may not be able to get the slipcover, but definitely these Blu-rays are the ultimate versions of the film so far. I could go on and on about the Sleepaway Camp films, and I feel like I kind of have already, but man, sometimes I have trouble deciding which one is my favorite. You know, I love the first one. I think the first one is just so classic because everybody knows about that ending that the crying game eventually stole. And it just introduced us to Felissa Rose and Christopher Collett and Jonathan Tiersten and some of these people that are instantly recognizable at horror cons now. We all know them from the first one. We all love the first movie. Who doesn't love Judy, Meg, and Mel? Fucking Mike Kellen. I want to say that was like his last movie. I love Mike Kellen in that movie. Gets the arrow right through the neck. It's all good stuff. And Sleepaway Camp actually features, in my opinion, some more creative death sequences than a lot of the early slashers that were coming around that time. It's just the censors and the MPAA started coming down on movies like that a lot in the 80s. And unfortunately, the Sleepaway Camp movies kind of suffered from that, but I still love all the creative death scenes in those movies. Part 2 is probably the one that I've seen the most. I just love part 2. I think Pamela Springsteen really brings something to Angela that Felissa Rose couldn't bring, but at the same time Felissa Rose is Angela. It's how we know that character. Like immediately when I think of Angela, I do immediately think of Felissa Rose. She embodies that character and she defines Angela for who she is. But at the same time, Pamela Springsteen was just she was campy and she was funny and she was lively and she elevated that character to cult status in my opinion. And had they carried those movies on, I think people would think of Pamela Springsteen in a more iconic way, the same way they think of like Jason and some slasher fans probably already do. But Felissa Rose needs to be recognized for that original performance of Angela, just that quiet, subdued, creepy performance with the wide eyes. I think she is one of the main reasons why the first Sleepaway Camp really holds up in terms of its creepiness and its atmospheric feel. And the film is really bleak at times. It's borderline nihilistic, and but then at other times it has this absurdist sense of humor, like something out of a John Waters film, kind of like Crazy Aunt Martha. She's in a whole other fucking movie. That actress that plays Aunt Martha, Desiree Gold, I think she's dead now, rest in peace, but her performance as Aunt Martha is fucking crazy.
no, I'm afraid that they wouldn't approve of that at all.
She's just doing her thing, and I know she's probably playing it for laughs, but that set the tone immediately for me when I was a kid and I saw Sleepaway Camp. I saw the movie way too young, by the way. I was watching that movie when I think I was like 7 or 8, and so you can imagine seeing some of the disturbing things in that film, especially that shocking ending. And not to mention, there's like kids getting hacked up and shit, and pedophile cooks getting boiled, a camp counselor girl who not only gets stabbed in the shower, but then the knife just drags down her fucking back. And then we can't forget about the curling iron going up the girl's Yahoo. A lot of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. When I was a kid, I didn't exactly know what was going on in that scene, but I do now, and it's pretty disturbing. But anyway, I feel like I'm rambling about Sleepaway Camp, and I could talk about the sequels too. I love part two. Part two was actually more of like to me, it felt like a porn when I was a kid, because it seemed like I always rented that movie every single goddamn weekend, because me and my friends would have these sleepovers, and we would always want to watch Sleepaway Camp 2 because it had Allie. And you guys know who I'm talking about. Valerie Hartman as Allie. Allie in the bathroom, Allie in the woods, Allie in the cabin. You guys know what's up. If you've seen Sleepaway Camp 2, there are titties all over that movie. I mean, titties galore. It's like the first movie had a bunch of penises, dicks, and male ass. And then the second one comes in, and it's all about tits. So part two to me, it's definitely not my favorite, but it's the one I revisited the most as a kid for obvious reasons. Now, part three had some interesting things in it too. Part three is campy as shit. I love Michael J. Pollard in the movie. I love the woman who plays his wife, Lily. And I just love the slew of characters there. And if you notice in the third one, a lot of people know this, but they named the rich kids after the Brady Bunch. And then they named the poor kids after some of the characters in West Side Story. So I always thought that was cool. Also, in part two, for those who didn't know, they named a lot of the characters after the Brat Pack. Like Rob, as in Rob Lowe, Allie, as in Allie Sheedy, Charlie and Emilio, Uncle John, which I think was supposed to be like John Hughes, and Phoebe, as in Phoebe Cates. You guys get it. If you look up on IMDb, there's trivia on all this shit. But I remember the first time I picked up on that, it like blew my fucking mind. But anyway, I've been gushing, I've been jizzing all over these movies. I just love Sleepaway Camp. I love these three movies, and I mainly just wanted to talk about this Red Cross edition because I stare at it in my collection and I just love it. I love it. But I do also love these Blu-rays. You got Sleepaway Camp 3, you got Sleepaway Camp 2, and then you got Sleepaway Camp, the original. And I'm going to close out this video by saying to Scream Factory that you guys need to get on releasing these films on 4K. They deserve it. I know these films have a cheap quality to them. They're lower budget. They're a little grainy, gritty, murky, shoddy in terms of production value, but I don't give a shit. Sleepaway Camp, the first three anyway, those are important films to me, and I feel like they need 4K releases. So, Scream Factory, get on it. Anyways, I've been rambling long enough, so I guess what I'm trying to say is watch Sleepaway Camp, the trilogy. You won't be disappointed. If you haven't seen them, these are great slasher movies. They're funny, they're violent, they're sexy. They're not cinematic masterpieces, but, I hate using the term guilty pleasures, but that's what they are. These are shitty movies, but they're awesome on rainy days. Perfect films to watch on a rainy day or when you're extremely horny. So anyway, you've been listening to Rich with Red Phone Video, and be sure to stab the like button. I'm a happy camper. I love to drink and fuck. If you pay me money on my titties, you can suck. That is it, guys. Until next time, have a horrific day. Watch some awesome horror movies, and I'll catch you next time.
Good night.